Let me get the recording started. I am very, very excited to be introducing Amy, who has been a master gardener for 10 years, holds a degree in chemistry, and has been gardening since she was a child with her parents in Eastern Canada. Thank you so much for being here, Amy. Take it away and let us know what you need.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Elizabeth and I have been hanging out and chatting and figuring out ways that I could use my social media platform to try to help the Chicago Grows community. And then she asked me, hey, would you be available in the summer? What would you like to talk about? And of course, tomatoes are a big topic. They are the #1 grown annual in the United States. So I get a lot of questions about them. I do a lot of videos about them. I've done a lot of classes about them. So this is my full-on presentation for everything I know about tomatoes. I prefer, if you have a question, throw it in the chat. I have asked Elizabeth to interrupt. If we're talking about pruning and airflow and you have a question, I'd prefer let's stop right there and let's get into it. And then we can kind of direct. I like to direct. Each presentation has a different audience, and you guys might be more interested in pests or diseases or harvesting. So we can just sort of tailor things as we go. Feel free to jump in and ask whatever questions you want. I do want to continue. I'm going to get the presentation up here. Okay, can everybody see all things tomatoes? I am a big believer in taking care of our plants, all of our plants, to try to prevent diseases and problems and how to maximize our harvest. My name is Amy Powers. I am a garden coach, which is a job I made up. I have been a master gardener for about 10 years. My parents are teachers. My brother's a teacher, and I have 7 aunts and uncles that are teachers. And so this whole idea of how to explain things and break things down has been sort of a part of my DNA for a long time. So I've taken my passion for gardening and all my master gardener experience, and during the pandemic, the volunteering opportunities were kind of dwindling up. So I started making some videos for my sister back home who does not know how to garden. She's the sibling who never got involved and didn't want to get her hands dirty. And she bought a new house, and I started to make videos, and all of a sudden they kind of started to take off. And then I had people in Chicago ask me if I could come to their house. So I now teach people how to garden at their house or virtually. And we do all kinds gardening. I teach all kinds of different stuff. If you want to just follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at powers_plants. A lot of people say it's just nice to have somebody from this area who's teaching gardening in your exact zone with the same weather conditions. So what are tomatoes anyway? The tomato, which the Latin name is Solanum lycopersicum, is a plant whose fruit is technically an edible berry, but we eat it as a vegetable. The tomato is a member of the nightshade family, and that includes eggplant, potatoes, chili peppers, and it actually originated from and was domesticated in Western South America. In those native regions of South America, tomatoes can be perennial, but for the rest of us, we grow them as annuals, which means they die back in the cold temperatures of late fall, early winter here, United States and Canada. So we need to replant tomatoes every year. They're tender annuals, and specifically that means they cannot tolerate frost at all. That's why we normally wait in Chicago till like at least after Mother's Day before we put them in the ground, because there's always that risk of frost. There's hundreds of varieties. I love this picture. So many different colors and sizes and shapes and different types of plants as well. And it is the most popular garden vegetable in the United States. First, let's differentiate. We have heirloom tomatoes. That is a category, a variety of tomato that's been passed down through the years by saving seeds from fruits. They are not hybrid. They have not been bred. Nothing has been cross-pollinated. Those are the originals, the OGs, the heirloom tomatoes. They are true to their type, which also means that if you save seeds from an heirloom tomato and you store that seed indoors in a cool, dry location in the winter and grow that seed next year, you'll get the same tomato plant that you harvested the seed from. Heirloom tomatoes are known for fantastic flavor and taste. However, they are not bred to be disease resistant, and they are not as productive as some of the modern hybrids. So hybrid tomatoes, these are actually the most common. They are bred by crossing specific varieties. They're very productive. They give high yields and they are very disease resistant, making them the easiest to grow, but they do lack that heirloom tomato taste, and the seeds aren't true. Okay, so hybrid seeds are produced through controlled pollination, and these seeds are often called F1 or F1 hybrids. So you can collect seeds and you can save them to grow next year, but the plant you get from the seed is not going to be like the parent. Okay, so you can save seeds, but you're not going to get what you grew to begin with. So when you're selecting tomatoes, I just wanted to show it can be tricky sometimes. Different companies label things differently, but when selecting your tomatoes, you'll often see the word hybrid up here in the top left or heirloom. The bottom right is from a different company. They call theirs F1. F1 hybrid, all the same thing. Heirloom is what we're looking for. If it doesn't say, it often is an heirloom. And you will often see the word open pollinated. That means a human being did not cross pollinate two different varieties together. So that's just something to keep an eye out on when you're selecting your tomatoes. Now, this I think is the thing that blows most people's mind when they're beginners. There are two different types of tomato plants. Okay, there are determinate tomatoes and there are indeterminate tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes are bushier. They're a more compact plant. Most set their fruit pretty early in the season and all within a few weeks. So these are the ones that we think of often for cooking. Because you get your harvest almost all at the same time, then you're going to go cook and can and preserve them. Okay. Indeterminate tomatoes are the vining habit. They are the ones that get 8 feet tall sometimes, and they will produce fruit continuously along that growing vine until the frost kills it. Okay. Now, here is a graphic that shows how you can tell the difference. It should say on your plant tag or your seed package, but I have bought plenty of tomatoes before where it didn't. Okay. An indeterminate plant is the one on the left here. And what that means is there's one main stem, and at the very top, there are no flowers. There's leaves that grow into more stem and more vine, and off it goes, and it goes and goes and goes until October, and oftentimes can be 8 feet tall. A determinate tomato is smaller, and that main stem at the top will have a flower cluster. So once those flowers come out, the whole plant size doesn't continue growing, and that's determined now how much fruit you will get off that plant. Okay. The biggest thing to note is the size. Okay. If you didn't keep the tag and you're not sure, after the plants have been in the ground for about a month here, this is mine after 1 month, determinate on the left, vining indeterminate on the right, double the size, planted on the same day. Okay, so it's really just about the habit and the growing habit and then how the fruit is produced. Determinate tomatoes are generally your San Marzanos and your Roma tomatoes, the ones that we're generally going to be doing a lot of cooking with. Selection, I want you to think about disease resistance. Now, none of us on this call, I don't think, are growing large greenhouses or gardens full of hundreds or thousands of tomato plants. Most of these diseases are kind of reserved for large crop situations or when you're growing in the ground. But it is important to note, if you do have a disease, you want to know what disease you have. And then on the seed package, there are these letters, A, F, N, T, V, and others, which mean that that plant is particularly bred to be resistant to that particular disease. So if you know you've had Fusarium wilt before, then it'd be important for you to try to select one that's specifically resistant. Now, nothing is immune to these diseases, but they are resistant, okay? Spacing is also probably the biggest thing, because a lot of people don't know that some of these can be 8 feet tall. We often underestimate how large those big varieties can get, how much space we need, and then we end up jamming a bunch of plants together in a small space because we started some from seed and I got sick, so I'm going to throw them in this bed and see what happens. And it often becomes very crowded. And crowding means no airflow. Crowding means sunlight can't penetrate all the way through the plant, and water gets trapped amongst the leaves, and that's how we get leaf diseases. Okay, so in terms of spacing, dwarf plants can be a foot apart if you're growing them in the same container. Determinate or in the ground, determinate plants need to be staked with a typical ring cage. I'll show a picture of that here in a minute. Your determinate plants can be about 15 to 24 inches apart. And then those vigorous indeterminate varieties, we often want 4 feet apart. And if you're putting them in the ground in rows, we need 5 to 6 feet between rows. So those are pretty big plants. The next thing we're considering is days to maturity, okay? Every seed package will have days to maturity. These are the number of days from when the plant is put in the soil outdoors to when the first fruit is ripened to harvest, okay? In the Midwest, we don't have a very long growing season. Recommended is to try to find plants that are 60 to 69 days. That way, like last year, I don't know if you guys were growing tomatoes last year, but we didn't have a lot of heat early on. It was a very slow start. And by the end of August and September, our tomatoes were still green and not ripe. So it's best to try to find something in that 60 to 70 days. Remember, as big and beautiful as those large tomatoes can be, it does take longer for them to mature and ripen. So just keep those things in mind when you're selecting your tomatoes. And then you got to make a decision on staking, okay? Leaves and fruit should never touch the soil, ever. So staking and trellising is done for tomatoes to support the plant above the ground, especially under the weight of ripening fruit. So you think about the type of tomatoes and the type of support that you will need before you plant. You must install the supports when the plant is small. Once these things start getting big and crazy, it can be much harder to try to figure out how to get those stems wrapped around a trellis. So think about those things ahead of time. This is your typical tomato cage. These are not large enough for most indeterminate varieties. Okay, these are great for the bushier, smaller, determinate tomatoes. They're just not large enough. A very simple thing that a lot of people use, very economical, is a single stake. We want to put the stake about 3 to 4 inches from the plant. And then once the plant is 12 inches tall, we just tie the main stem to the stake about every 8 inches. And we can tie them with really anything soft. So garden twine, strips of fabric. My mother used to use pantyhose. Anything flexible. We don't want to damage the stems while we're tying them too tightly, but we're just trying to give it that support to keep it up off the ground.
We had a question come in about spacing. If the tomatoes are too close together, but they're starting to fruit, can they be moved, or you'll just hope for the best this year and adjust for next year?
I would probably leave them at this point because we don't want to set the plant back, and we have such a short growing season. When we move them, they're going to need to put a lot of energy into their roots. I would try to prune. Tomatoes should be pruned a lot. We can go through the pruning stuff too. I would probably leave it and just see if we can't keep some airflow in between them. That's what I would do. One of the trellises that I like, that I find works the best, mine's 4 feet. You can get them made of different materials. Mine happen to be made of steel. They were given to me as a gift, actually a really great gift. Most of the large big box garden centers only provide the round wire cages. But if you go to a garden center where all they do is sell plants and supplies, they're going to offer you more options for plant supports. There are some places online as well. And don't be afraid to just get creative. I have followers sending me pictures of a stake pounded in the ground and some string. Go for it. Whatever works. All we're trying to do is keep that plant off the ground and give it lots of space so we've got lots of air to prevent diseases. So there's no, this is what's called the Florida weave or the basket weave. This is somebody who took some tree limbs and pounded them in the ground and then used some twine. And we're really just weaving them in between the plants and going between the stakes as a simple way to keep them supported. So whatever you need to do is great. When it comes to planting, we need to be prepared to cover your early planted tomatoes overnight to protect them from frost. After Mother's Day, even this year, I think we had a freeze, right? We had some really cold weather this spring. So when your tomatoes are outside, because they're tender annuals, they cannot tolerate a frost. A light sheet, I've got a pillowcase, whatever works is fine. We're really trying to keep the frost off the tomatoes, off the leaves. And we really just want to kind of create a little mini greenhouse overnight for it, just to try to trap some warm air in there. It's also really useful to water your plants. I know it sounds a little crazy to water your plants before a freeze, but actually water is a great conductor of heat. And so watering your plants when you know there's a freeze or a frost coming is a really smart idea. For best results with minimal risk, try to wait and put your plants out not only after the frost-free date, but also when your soil is warm. So oftentimes it's frost-free, but our soil temperature is still 55. The plant's just going to stall out and not give you a lot of growth at that point. Okay, so you can just put a thermometer in the ground, a meat thermometer from your kitchen, and see what your soil temperatures are like. Or if they're ground temperatures, I use soiltemperature.app. That's a website that keeps track of soil temperatures around North America. And so that's a great way to kind of keep an eye on how your soil temperatures are doing. Tomatoes like 65 degrees and higher. So while everyone wants to put that first tomato out, be mindful that setting a tomato plant out too early can slow its growth to a standstill, and it may take up to 2 weeks for a tomato plant exposed to cold night temperatures to resume normal growth. So waiting is good. When it comes to planting, we strongly recommend planting deep and removing lower leaves. So the first picture over here on the left is just me holding my tomato seedling. And then the second picture is I've got this probably 3 inches deep. Okay, with a lot of perennials and things, when we plant them, we tell you to keep the height of the soil as it meets the stem. We want that same height across to where the ground is that it's going in. But with tomatoes, we don't need to do that. The deeper, the better. There's little ridges and bumps on the stem that will actually put out more roots, which is going to help the plant get established faster. So I bury mine about 3 inches deep or 4 inches deep. You need to leave enough to have 2 sets of leaves above ground when you're done. But so you can see here, after I've planted it deeply, I immediately remove those lower leaves because we don't ever want them touching the soil. So that's a really good way. This is another way that a lot of people do it too, is called the trench method, where you basically lay the tomato plant on its side about 3 inches deep, and then just leave the top sets of leaves sticking out of the top. And again, prune anything off that's touching the soil. That's a great way for tomato plants to get good, healthy roots out nice and early. Always remove the lower leaves. So soil has microbes in there. There's bacteria, fungus, viruses, all kinds of pathogens, okay? That's great for the soil. We actually require it and need it for healthy soil, but we don't want it on the leaves of our plants. So the leaves shouldn't touch the soil. Once the plant is growing, I want you to remove all the leaves and stems from the bottom 6 to 12 inches of the plant. Any fruit that comes out anyway that low is going to drag down and touch the soil, which is going to cause rot. So all varieties, always remove the bottom 6 to 12 inches. And here's a picture of a commercial greenhouse. They don't have leaves on the bottom 24 inches. Okay, they don't risk disease. Once the plant's established and growing, they'll take all those leaf stems off. Can anybody tell me why they have so many leaves on top? Why do we need to leave the leaves on top? 2 big reasons. One, most people don't know. One is for photosynthesis, right? We need some green there. We need some green. Did anybody pop in the chat with some suggestions? Okay, so
No.
the other reason is tomato fruit should never ripen in the hot sun.
Yeah, a couple of people said shade in the chat as you were
Smart.
sharing that.
Very smart, yes. We don't want our fruit ripening in direct hot sun. So yes, we need plenty of leaves to photosynthesize that sunlight to continue the plant's growth, but we don't want the fruit sitting in direct hot sun. It is a good idea to mulch your tomatoes. Some kind of organic material. A lot of people like to use straw. This prevents microbes from the soil splashing up onto the leaves and creating disease. It also helps retain soil temperatures and moisture. And I want you to delay the application of your mulch though until the soil has really warmed up to that 65 and higher when it's hot. I don't want you mulching when the soil's 55 because then we're going to help keep it cool, which is not what we want. So once the soil temperatures are nice and hot, temperatures are high, then that's when you want to go in and mulch. We want to water regularly and thoroughly, especially when dry. So we want long, deep soaks. That's going to encourage the plant to reach deep for water. We want consistent moisture. Okay. We need the water in the soil in order for the plant not only to uptake water into the plant, but also to uptake nutrients like calcium, which is really important when the fruit is forming. So we need to have consistent moisture. That's also how they get their nutrients. Don't let the soil dry out completely. That's how you can end up with blossom end rot. And don't water the leaves. That's what causes diseases. Okay, so the top picture is correct. We've got the nozzle low, and here in the second picture, watering the leaves, bad idea. Try your best not to have water droplets splashing up off the ground onto the leaves. Again, those are soil pathogens getting up there. That's how we get diseases. So don't have your hose on full blast right in close and have lots of droplets spraying up. I want you to water early in the morning. It's inevitable that some water is going to get up on your plants. Then at least in the morning when we do it, the sunlight is going to come dry that plant off right away. If you have a really hot location and you're in a smaller container and the soil is going to dry out faster, you may need to inspect your soil and water twice a day. And the only way to know, everybody's environment is different. Everyone's soil composition is different. Everyone's getting a different amount of rain in this area of their yard than everybody else. The only way to know is by inspecting. Pull the mulch back, put your hands on the soil. I think everybody should have dirt under their fingernails by 7:30 a.m. Like, put your hands in the top inch of soil. Is it really fully dry? Get in there and have a look. All right. Inspect your soil is the only real way to know. Fertilizer. Tomatoes are heavy feeders. Apply a starter fertilizer at planting. The starter fertilizer numbers on the package will say 10, 10, 10. Unless you are using fresh potting soil that already has fertilizer in it. The potting soil fertilizer, they say, lasts about 4 to 6 weeks. So if you're using fresh soil, you don't need to fertilize for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Then I want you to get a common or an all-purpose fertilizer. There are some tomato-specific ones. That's all fine. Just follow your package instructions on how often you need to use that product. They're all different, but the label is the law. When you do apply those fertilizers and any other products, there's a contract that you enter into that you are going to follow the label. Don't over-fertilize, can lead to problems and is expensive. Don't get fertilizer on the leaves, and we don't fertilize in a heat wave. When the plants are stressed out from abnormally high heat, I say in Chicago around 95, it's not uncommon to be 90, 92 for a few days. 95 and up is pretty abnormally high. So our plants are under stress. Let's not hit them up with a shot of fertilizer, which is going to encourage them to grow more when they're already, okay? Pruning increases airflow below the plant and through the plant for disease prevention. It evens out light distribution around the plant, makes it easier to trellis and support the plant later on because you are kind of directing the growth. We want to prevent common tomato diseases like the powdery mildew, leaf spot, and blight. Leave the leaves above the fruit to shade the tomatoes while ripening. And this is probably the biggest debate I have with people every year, which is pruning suckers. So sucker here in the picture is this shoot of growth that comes out in between the leaf stem and the main stem. Suckers do produce fruit. What is recommended is that you prune them off of indeterminate tomatoes, those big vining tomatoes, or the plant gets overgrown and dense and becomes difficult to manage and trellis. You're going to get fruit on an indeterminate until October. So don't worry about not having enough fruit. These tomatoes put out a lot of fruit. So I'd like you to prune your suckers off the big determinates or indeterminates. On the determinates, I want you to leave your suckers because we're only going to get one big harvest at one time. So let's maximize what we get. That one's not going to continue to get bigger and bigger as the season goes on. However, I want you to take every stem, leaf stem, sucker, all of it off your bottom 6 to 12 inches. Any fruit that low anyway is going to drag down to the soil and rot. So bottom 6 to 12 inches, fully clean, even of suckers on a determinate, but leave all the determinants above that. Leave every piece of flowering plant we can have to maximize our harvest on those. Is there questions on pruning and suckers? Okay,
Nope.
let's talk about harvesting. This picture is showing the green mature stage. This is when the tomato has stopped growing and ripening has started. It's not ripe yet, but it has started. What that means is ethylene gas is working through the interior tissue at this stage. And when do we know that ripening has gone through to the center? Is when we're at the breaker stage, okay? The second tomato from the right here has the perfect blush at the bottom. That's the blossom end. So remember when the flower got pollinated and then the flower turns into fruit and the blossom falls off the end, which is where that little black mark is at the bottom of the tomato, the blossom end, okay? When the blossom end starts to turn a blush orange pinkish color, that is the sign that ripening has gone through the thickest interior center part of the tomato, okay? That color will then continue to ripen up to the shoulders, which is like the third one down here. We've got a little more blushing. And then the one on the right is fully ripe. We've got red from the bottom all the way to the top, around to the tip. So I could have harvested this one on the right already. We're going to talk about this in a little more detail, but it is best to pick your tomatoes when they are at the blushing or the breaker stage. That is because research has been done by multiple universities that show you'll get the same ripening of the tissue and the same flavor development by ripening them indoors at room temperature versus leaving them on the vine. Now you can leave them on the vine. I'm not saying don't, but when you leave the fruit on the vine, you're more likely to have a chance that an animal is going to come in there and eat it, that you're going to get sun scald, which is basically a sunburn from it just being out in the heat in the sun too long, and splitting. Splitting happens when everything's nice and ripe and then a big rainstorm comes and the soil gets flushed with water and the plant just can't absorb it and keep it under wraps, and the tomato starts to split and crack, okay? So it's best to pull them off the vine earlier, wrap them in paper. You can put them in a paper bag. You can just leave them on the counter. Sometimes when I know I'm having people over and I want to use some of them and I got various stages on the kitchen counter, I will put a piece of fruit like an apple or a banana, because they also release ethylene gas while they are ripening. And together I put the ones that aren't far enough along in that same paper bag together for a few days and they'll ripen faster. Also, it's important to note, when you leave your tomatoes out in the direct sun, the reddening color change happens faster, but that doesn't mean the ethylene gas has ripened the inside of the tomato. So don't be fooled. Not all red tomatoes have necessarily gone through ripening if they're in the direct sunlight. Okay, the color process happens in direct sun. that doesn't mean that the ethylene has ripened the tissue internally. So
we had a question about harvesting. Any tips for when to pull green zebra tomatoes? So if they're not red tomatoes.
I would have to look that up. I've never grown one of them. You would have to keep an eye on it. So it starts at that mature stage when the size of the tomato has not changed at all. And then I'd imagine the coloring process would happen from top to bottom. I'd have to look that one up. That's a good question. Anything else?
Not for right now, but we have a few more questions coming in. So when we get to our Q&A time.
So some common problems. This is sun scalds, basically a sunburn caused by tomatoes left on the vine in full sun during hot weather. Again, leave the leaves on above the fruit so it can ripen properly. This is the splitting that happens when I leave my tomatoes on and now they're to the ripe stage, and then a big gush of rain comes in one of those summer storms, and the excessive moisture entering the plant all at once while a fruit is ripening is what expands that internal tissue faster than the skin can allow, and you'll get either concentric or circled splitting or the cracking that happens at the top. Also, fruit that's in the hot direct sun will crack more than the shaded fruit, so that's another reason why we should keep things in the shade, and it's a good idea to harvest before the tomatoes are completely ripe. This is a common one called blossom end rot. This usually happens on the first fruit that was setting in the spring due to those cool temperatures or inconsistent moisture. Again, the skin goes on around the fruit, and it's critical to have enough calcium. A lot of people immediately assume it's because they don't have enough calcium in their soil. Often calcium is a pretty abundant mineral in our soil and in potting soil. That's usually not the problem. But if there's not enough water and things dry out, the plant is trying to set fruit and it can't draw the calcium out of the soil because there's no water there. Or the soil temperatures drop below about 50. And at that point, the pH and the chemistry of the soil doesn't allow the calcium to go up into the water. So this is another good reason why we don't want to put our tomatoes out too early. If all of the tomatoes in your container or in the ground, all of them have this, now you need a soil test and you probably have a calcium deficiency, and you can get a look at, you can find soluble calcium at the most garden centers in the fertilizer section that could help alleviate the problem in the short term. So here's your overall best practices. Know the type that you are growing and plan accordingly. Plant deeply and remove all leaves touching the ground. Remove the stems from the bottom 6 to 12 inches. Water in the morning. Don't water the leaves. Try not to splash water onto the leaves. Also, don't touch your plants when they're wet. That's how things get spread. We need good airflow. Prune your suckers on indeterminate. Leave the suckers on determinate. Rotate your crops. That way the pests do remember and come back to that same location. So even if you're just moving your tomatoes around whatever size space you have, that's going to help. Leave fruit in the shade of your upper leaves and harvest before fully ripe. Other than that, I've got some pests and common stuff, but I think you want to do the Q&A now?
Yeah, we had a few come in. One was about the suckers actually, and if are you able to transplant the suckers?
Some people have rooted them, yes. So here's the thing. We try not to ever leave a large wound, okay? So it's best to prune your sucker when it's really small and you can just snip it, pinch it with your fingers. So try to do that early in the process. I do have some followers who have rooted them in some water, the piece, in a little small glass, and then planted them out and have had some success with that. And you get so many,
Awesome.
so why not try, right?
Yeah. And then somebody asked, can you grow tomatoes inside in a grow tent?
I have grown them in one of those. Somebody got me one of those kits with like the grow lights on them. Where like you get the little pod and you put it in, has the seed and everything in there, you just keep it wet. I have definitely had success growing them indoors, but again, smaller plants that have a fast days to maturity. Cherry tomatoes normally do really well indoors. You also, on some of them, would have to manually pollinate them, right? You'd have to make sure that those flowers are being pollinated if you're growing them inside, because you won't have the insects buzzing around.
Awesome. And then for fried green tomatoes, what color should you use? Light, medium, or dark?
So you can harvest them when they're in that. I mean, the whole point of the green tomato is it hasn't been ripened, right? It's got that little tougher texture. You're gonna fry it up, add all your spices. So yeah, you can harvest them at the green stage. That you don't need to wait for the blushing to happen all the way through. The more the ripening happens, the more soft that internal tissue is gonna get, which isn't gonna hold up in the frying pan. So a little earlier is gonna be better. But you want to make sure, keep an eye on them. We're trying to get it to the point where it's no longer growing. That's when now it has finished development, and then the ethylene will start to ripen the inside. So you don't want to get it when it's that kind of white green and it's still young. Keep an eye on it and get your hand on there and be like, oh yeah, this guy hasn't grown in the last couple of days. Now you can get in there and slice it. And I'd love to hear what you're doing to cook them up, because all my followers are telling me I gotta cook more fried green tomatoes.
Silver, you have a recipe you want to share?
Sometime I make up, I might make it up with cornmeal, and sometime I use this, every once in a while I use a fish fry, but I usually make it up like with the cornmeal, almost like I'm a fry a fish.
Yeah.
And
So
I
do
it's
you drop it in some egg wash or something first to get that coating to
yes,
stick, and then throw it in the
uh-huh.
pan with some grease?
Right, you throw it in a pan, yes. And
I'm
when they
told I
come
need to
out,
add some
everybody
spice.
like to eat them straight out the skillet. Sometimes I dip them in ranch dressing or
Oh, I do like that. That's right up
and
my
one time
alley.
my grandkids, they went and got this giant bag of green tomatoes and I was just frying them.
I
Everybody
love it.
wanted hot. I mean, I did. I mean, it was a giant bag too, and I was like, "Look, I'm tired, guys."
So you bought them that way, green?
Yes, from a
Awesome.
farmer's market,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to go out back and pull your own.
yeah. Well, I got a growth tent. My parsley grow well.
Yeah.
Certain stuff like that. So I'm getting them more growing, and we learning. It's a box we're gonna start. I heard what you said about crowding the plants
Yeah.
because this box, it say oh whole 14 plants. Come on now. They got to be, wait a minute, I'll show you. They gotta be little plants.
14 plants.
Because they talking about it can hold 14 plants. Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
maybe the dwarf, like those small cherry varieties, might do well inside. But yeah, they'd have to be pretty small.
Okay, what would you grow? Like, we're gonna try to grow some stuff in here too.
Yeah. That's
Now,
what I got.
that'd
So
be too many plants. I just heard what you said about stuffing them.
yeah, you don't wanna crowd them.
You
I'll tell you
see,
what, those are great for any kind of lettuces and
okay,
spinaches, and
uh-huh,
arugula do great in there.
okay,
Any of the microgreens are loaded with nutrients, and you can just layer those in your salads.
okay.
Yeah, they do
How
great.
many
Anything that's
plants you
germ
think could go in there comfortably?
I mean, there are some little varieties. I'm not sure what they are that what is the name of that company that do the little containers that have the seed already in there? I'll look it up
Right.
and send it to Elizabeth. She can send it to you.
Okay, yeah, because I'm like that when you said overcrowding, that that is, I mean,
Yeah.
that's too many to go in here.
Yep. And with a lettuce or a spinach or an arugula like that, you're going to be cutting it and using it as it's growing the leaves. So like
Right,
then it
that's
doesn't
how
get too
parsley
crowded.
is.
That's right.
And the
But
more you seem to cut it, the faster it grows.
that's right. So then you can just keep using it. But the tomatoes are tough because you got to leave them in there for a
But
good month
tomatoes are
before they.
tougher to grow than it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'll see if I can't find the variety of the really small ones.
Okay.
The other thing about the green zebra tomatoes, when the yellowing starts up towards the shoulders, that
Okay.
means you're pretty close and you can harvest. And when you give a little press on the outside
Okay.
of the tomato is starting to yield a little bit to your pressure.
Okay.
Okay. When you don't want it rock hard, unless you're doing frying them up, green tomatoes. But the
Right.
zebra ones, you want to
Well,
wait till
sometimes
it's
I
got a
still
little
don't want
give.
them rock hard for frying. I slice them thin, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah.
don't want them too crunchy, you know,
No,
because it
that's
only
right.
take a few minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm just trying to grow. I'm with Mathers as well, and we trying to grow these. See what kind of plants that could grow in here. We had to wait a while
Sure.
because we had to order a lot of them.
Yeah.
But still, I think what they telling you, that's from what you said, it's too crowded to have even 14 little plants like
No,
they have it.
no,
That's a
that looks
lot.
like maybe 2 feet by 2 feet
Yeah, that
at
is
most.
let's see. Yeah, it's not that big. We just not getting them. It's been a while, but the plants that they trying to tell you to put in here, that's too many. I'm trying to find a size, but
Yeah,
I'm
they
not
just
gonna
want to
put
make
that
it look
many in
good
there.
on the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put all those plants in there from what she said, and like
No.
even parsley. I'm gonna put some around my parsley because parsley start growing and it grow
Oh, it
real
gets pretty big.
fast.
Yes, it does. That'll get
You
a
know,
good
and I
18
use it,
inches
and
across. Yeah.
what I did, some of it, I take it off and put it in some water in the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah. Smart.
It lasts
Yeah.
for a while there too.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely, it does.
so I get a lot of sunshine. Matter of fact, it's too much sunshine in my window. It burns stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, the
Yeah,
tomatoes like that, though. The tomatoes like that.
all that heat like that. I mean, it's really, really
Oh,
hot.
yep. They love it. Same with
Okay.
the zucchini. Yeah, they love it. I mean, they don't want anything like 98, but I mean, if it's in the 90s out there, yeah, they love that heat.
Oh, okay. I'll see because I know it's. I mean, it's really, really because my windows face the west, so I get
Yeah,
all that sun. It really don't get too hot around here to like 2 or 4 o'clock. And I got
afternoon. Yeah.
darkened curtains. That's why it looked like it's dark in here now. Not, but I couldn't make it darker. Yeah.
Yep, 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 yep.
So you've been a really big help. I mean, especially, ooh, you really helped with this box and listen to what you say
Good,
about
good,
because
good,
it helped
good.
me
I'm glad
grow
to hear
other
it.
stuff as
Good.
well.
Anything, was there anything
Are
else in the chat there, Elizabeth? I mean, so both of the suckers, whether it comes off an indeterminate, so what happens is whenever we're propagating, right? This is a version of propagating. You can propagate woody shrubs, you can propagate stuff. You want to get the stem and the plant tissue while it's in its growing phase. So whether it's determinate or indeterminate shouldn't matter. The question is, yeah, I'm very curious. I've never tried it. What the child plant is going to be. It should be the same as the plant you took it off of.
Okay.
The problem is it's going to take a very long time. By the time your plant's big enough to create suckers, you're now well into June. And even if you take a sucker and propagate it and get some roots on it, you're now into July, at which point, depending on your days to harvest for that plant, you might not get fruit on it before the frost. So it's probably why a lot of people don't do that, just because the length of time it takes before the frost comes. And I don't know anybody that has ever kept a plant alive indoors over the winter. There
Well,
must
that's
be
what
a
we
reason.
trying to do. We in Chicago, and just like you said, we only have a few months to grow certain stuff.
Yeah,
And then if the weather, we get this frost that's not expected, you trying to cover your stuff up. How can
yeah.
we trying to find out how can we sustain that's why we got this box trying to do a grow tent. How can we sustain that growing inside or in small spaces
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
winter
yeah.
months that our garden is down?
Yeah, that's right. So like outside, we want to do a good job of succession planting so that we've
Mhm.
got things like peas growing when it's nice and cool. And like this
Okay.
year we had a cool spring and I had the peas went crazy. I've never grown more peas in my life. And so then I kind of delayed when the tomatoes went out, right? But
Okay.
you know, some years the tomatoes are crazy and it's super hot early, and
Uh-huh.
the peas look bad. So it's like at least if we're kind of succession planting those cool season cole crops and the kales and lettuces and things on the shoulders, and then just using up whatever summer we have. But indoor, that's tricky too, because depending on how
Yeah.
warm you keep your inside, it's also not that favorable to those cool
Well, I
season
got a grow
plants.
tent about like this, and they have
Yeah,
a shelf on it. And
yeah,
then we had these boxes. We trying to see, since we live in Chicago, how we talked about canning, how to stress different drying stuff, or compressing it to go in the freezer if you don't have a
yeah,
lot of space. How do we
right.
fill in them gaps when a farm closed in October?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly.
So letters, okay. So if I'm gonna start letters or something like that in this box, when is the best time for me to do that?
You can start lettuce whenever, and
Okay,
I succession plant every 2 to 3 weeks another batch. So
okay,
I like a salad mix, like a mesclun mix. Those are the
yeah,
easiest ones to grow instead of the
okay.
heading lettuces. So I avoid the romaine. They just take up too much space, and then I get one harvest and
Right,
I'm
right,
done.
okay,
I want
okay.
the cut and come again blend, salad lettuce blends.
Hmm.
And then I'll start one, and then 2, 3 weeks later, I'll start another one. So then I'll
Okay,
start harvesting off that first one. And then
okay,
it starts to get a little bitter in the middle, and the stalks start to not taste so good. Then I'm pulling that out and going off the second one, start my third crop. So like I've
okay,
got a lettuce patch going all the time, and
okay.
I love a lettuce patch. I find the
Yeah, yes.
arugula
I
goes
just,
a
yeah, I
little
want
too
some
early
easy.
around here, so the arugulas are a little
Uh,
persnickety. But if you've got a shadier spot and just a little bit of sunlight, I like a couple of spinaches too.
I'm gonna try that in the sun. And we do have a garden down the street. Also I'm with, the Nature Museum and the C3 Leadership Program that be with the
Yep,
farms.
yep.
We help with supplies and stuff they need. Matter of fact, I'm
Good.
gonna go to the museum because the stuff that grow outside we can eat it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can.
Exactly.
Are there
That's
other
what they're for.
questions? Anybody else have
I'm
questions? I
sorry
had one
we
come
went
in
out
an
to Sunday, but yeah,
email. No, no, you're all right. I appreciate it, but I want to make sure we only have 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure we
they
get
probably want to make some
other
green
voices
tomatoes
if
too.
people have them. Other questions? Okay, Amy, I'm going to share my screen and show you the picture of the woman who had emailed in advance so that you
Yeah.
can get a sense
Okay, let's see.
of her questions and like her concerns. So this is a rooftop garden. She had emailed in advance, just curious about if the tomatoes don't look, what did she phrased it of like they don't look
Yeah.
happy,
They
how do I
just don't
make them
look that
happy?
happy. So to me, the thing with leaf curling, and this is what makes the watering conundrum tricky, is the leaves will look curled and unhappy whether you've got too much water or whether you don't have enough water. The symptoms look the same. So the only way to know is
Oh,
to inspect your soil and get your hands in there and see if there's too much water or is it drying out and there's not enough water. And then a regular fertilizer routine is also going to help. But this should be getting lots of full hot sun. We also, by the way, just had a couple of weeks of some you know, temps. We had a heat wave there above 95 for a solid week. And then we dipped into the low 90s for another week. And if this is a rooftop garden, and also notice that around this bed is black tile or shingles, right? Like that area on a roof is going to be even hotter. Okay. So plants don't get happy and like to set fruit once it's over 95. So if it were me, I'd start to put out a separate thermometer up here, a little cheap thermometer, lay it on the step platform over there, and let's start monitoring what your temperatures are up there. How hot is it getting? You might need a shade cloth in this situation, right? If you're growing it outside and things are really hot, just to keep the heat down. So you're basically just creating like a little tent. I don't know if you've seen them at the garden centers. There's like a black cloth with some holes in it to just redirect some of the sunlight away from the plant. And then you've got to get better at consistent watering, and just get your hands in the soil and see. Maybe it's too much watering. We need to have that top inch of soil fully dry out between our waterings. Okay, that's how you know.
Awesome. Thank you for that. She had to hop off, but she'll watch the recording, she said.
Yeah, so the last question in the chat here, how does help the soils moist enough or too wet? We don't ever want it swampy, wet, soggy soil. And a good way to tell is in between your waterings. Like during that heat wave last week in my raised bed container, I only had to water once every 3 days. And I'm in the south hot outdoor sun in a 2 foot by 2 foot deep box. So like, just because it's hot out doesn't mean you need to panic and water. Most people actually overwater because they panic when they see a heat wave. So don't waste your water resources. Touch the soil. Does it feel cool at all? Cool? Any kind of dampness in there? You know, when you pull that top 1/4 inch and you're like, oh, there's still water in here from yesterday. You don't need to water. Okay? I want you to water nice and deep and don't water again until the top inch is dry. Dry, like no water in it. Then water again, okay? Most people kill their plants from overwatering. Plants need oxygen in their roots in order for the chemical process to work. So no flooding the soil. We good? Perfect.
Yeah, that was awesome. I put a survey in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here. I will follow up with resources and with this recording, so you will have all of this information. So I hope that helps you be present. I will hopefully follow up with notes as well. It'll go on our website, so please share it out. Other questions, thoughts, comments? Amy, you've been getting some great, just nice positive reviews in the chat, so people are really enjoying it.
Yes.
And enjoy your
Thank you,
content on
everybody.
Instagram. Do you want to tell us where to find you?
Yeah, I'm at Powers Plants. It's Powers_plants. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. It's the same video gets posted every day to all three. So wherever one you're following me on, you'll get the same content. And I try to respond to messages right now. I still have time daily to kind of stay up with the comments, or the DMs. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're also welcome to email Chicago Food. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, one thing, I don't want to sound corny. Like tomatoes are one of the most challenging things for me personally to grow. But one thing I noticed with tomatoes and watering, that tomato plant will tell you when it wants some water. So that, because we have a tendency to overwater tomato. And if you have a saucer under the bottom, you can let that dry up. But I tell you, my tomatoes plant, the one I'm doing even now, it tells me, I went out there last night and it was like, oh my God, I didn't water it for about 3 days. I gave it some watering, and by the time I got up this morning, it was all happy. So there's also that probably non-verbal communication with plants.
Yeah, you're right.
I know it's another level, but yeah. Okay.
Let the plant. The other thing is those tomatoes are made up of a lot of water. They need a lot of water.
Oh yeah. I see things like it is a part of the living system that also reaches out as far as the celestial realms and under the dirt, the whole nights. But this was an excellent session, by the way.
Great. I appreciate the singing, Robert. Keep that
I got
voice
one for you.
I got
a one for you. I looked at a tomato plant yesterday and I thought the top tomatoes were good, but the one she had on the bottom already had that that blight under the bottom. And I'm like, well, there's also an issue with circulation. So what you think on that one? What would be your suggestion?
So a lot of times the earliest fruit are the ones that get, are you talking about the blossom end rot? You get that little black spot that starts to rot.
Yes.
That happened to you because of the soil temperature and moisture from May.
I know it was in our bed, the bed. I know that it was yesterday I inspected the bed. Of course, they were planted way too close together. And
maybe too early. You put them out
yes,
too early.
I think so. Yes.
So when that happens, just pull that rotten fruit. There's nothing you can do, and you don't want to eat it, and don't compost it. Just pull that end rot fruit, and the next ones will be okay.
Beautiful.
Don't let the soil dry out, though.
You know what? I think I'm going to show you something. I think she made it. I'm sure she did made it so I dry out. But anyway.
Try not to let it dry out. When it fully dries out, that's when the plant starts to not get the nutrients.
It gets agitated. Like, oh, anyway.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody. It was lovely to be here.
Awesome.
Get frying your tomatoes.
Thanks for being here, Amy. Have great afternoons, everyone.
Bye,
Email
everyone.
us if you have questions. Bye. Thanks for joining today, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions.